name is Aiden Kendrick, and I plan on attending St. Michael's College.
Good afternoon, my name is Jillian Perry, and I plan to attend Fordham University.
Good afternoon, my name is Althea Brennan, and I will be attending Cornell University.
We'll introduce ourselves. So my name is William Crosby, and I am the owner of an advertising and marketing company that's based here in New York.
I'm Stan Cohen, a sole practicing attorney in New York City.
Hi, I am Anthony Maria Bova, and I am the General Counsel of the New York County Lawyers Association.
I'm Rick Gregg. I spent a career as a corporate finance lawyer in the New York City law firm, and I'm now in the law firm.
So thank you for jumping right in and introducing yourselves. That's great. I will read the question to you, and you will have 4 minutes to give us your prepared response, and then we'll have 6 minutes of follow-up questions. All right? So your question, this is Unit 6, what challenges might face American constitutional democracy in the 21st century? And you have question number 1. So as the number of younger voters grows in relation to older voters, what responsibility, if any, do younger voters have to better understand government, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights? There are 2 subparts to this question. First, more than 20 countries around the world have mandatory voting. What are the advantages and disadvantages to mandatory voting? And second, should non-citizens be allowed to vote in local elections? Why or why not?
As the number of younger voters outweighs the number of older voters, they now assume the responsibility to learn their civic duties, comprehend the value of their rights, and understand the Constitution. Former New York Court of Appeals Chief Judge Judith Kaye, when describing this on a ruling of the New York State constitutional guarantee for a sound basic education, which the court held includes civic education that teaches skills fashioned to meet one practical goal, meaningful civic participation. All voters have the responsibility of civic duty, to vote, pay taxes, and obey the law, which are central to upholding a government. Voters need to understand their government in order to effectively participate in our popular sovereignty. Younger voters must also learn the ideas of civic engagement. Justice Lorentan said it best: liberty lies in the hearts of men and women. If it dies there, no constitution, no law, no court can save it. Younger voters must also understand civic principles. The Constitution is an ongoing conversation about the meaning of freedom in our daily lives. This discussion contributes to a more engaged and informed electorate, and understanding one's government allows a person to be able to ensure the government does not infringe on rights. As more people are informed about the government, participation and knowledge will increase.
Mandatory voting is a system of laws which requires eligible citizens to register and vote. This practice has a positive impact in other countries because it makes popular sovereignty truly representative of the consent of the governed. In our 2018 midterm elections, the eligible voter population consisted of 235 million people, while the total number of ballots counted remained at only 115 million. Mandatory voting could result in roughly 80% of the population voting. This would result in a far greater representation of the population in government and its policies. Mandatory voting requires every individual to fulfill their civic duty in the office of citizen. This is the belief that in order to foster the development of a democratic government, a citizen should be as civically engaged as possible, which includes voting. Mandatory voting also requires the support of every tax-paying member of the country. In the 2016 Australian presidential election, taxpayers were expected to contribute $227 million. Mandated public funding of presidential nominating conventions in the United States was ended through the passage of the Gabriella Miller Kids First Research Act. However, the right to vote is also the right not to vote, as highlighted in the Ethics of Voting by Jason Brennan. The lack of knowledge and interest of the median voter would negatively impact elections.
Non-citizens should be allowed to vote in local elections. As Justice Louis Brandeis aptly observed, local governments are laboratories of democracy that may try social experiments without having broader national implications. By enfranchising non-citizens in local elections, municipalities would be able to better hear from the governed who are most affected from their policies. This would result in a more proper expression of popular sovereignty. It would also allow potential citizens to practice voting so they could contribute to a more informed electorate when they receive citizenship. Moreover, non-citizens pay local taxes and use public services and attend public schools, which their taxes help fund. Their voices deserve to be heard when making decisions about these institutions. The Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996 establishes federal law that bars non-citizens from voting in federal elections, but does not prohibit non-citizen voting in state or local elections. However, no state has allowed non-citizen voting since 1926. In some states, local governments have given non-citizens the power to vote in local elections. Currently, 11 local governments, may I briefly conclude?
Yes.
Overall, non-citizen voting would show a greater expression of popular sovereignty.
Sure, so I see you take the position that non-citizens should have the right to vote. Do you believe that individuals who have been convicted of felonies should lose their right to vote as many jurisdictions have? And if that's, depending on your position, should that be the case across the entire country?
I absolutely do not think that felons should lose the right to vote after they have been convicted. But since we are based on a popular sovereignty, our government must represent all of the people of which are citizens of this nation. And when you cut out the ability for non-citizens to vote, it takes away an entire subset of population who have actually had experience with subsets of our society of which other people haven't, the justice system, to participate in our democracy. This can be seen in the Florida midterms, where the proposition that allowed that gave convicted felons the right to vote back passed by a very wide margin, showing that not only do convicted felons wish to have the right to vote, but citizens who have not been convicted wish they had that right as well.
In addition, allowing prior felons to vote would increase voter turnouts, which has been a large problem in the United States for some time. Especially during the 2016 election, we saw around 50% of the eligible voters only going out to the polls. Allowing prior felons who want to and have expressed the willingness to go vote, as seen with Amendment 4 to the Florida State Constitution, which allows them to vote, it would increase our popular sovereignty and help remedy this problem that our country is facing.
And consistently throughout American history, the right to vote has been expanded to other groups of people through the 15th Amendment, which expanded the right to African Americans, the 19th Amendment, which expanded it to women, and the 26th Amendment that expanded it to anybody over the age of 18.
I believe my colleague misspoke. It's the 23rd Amendment that expanded it to people under the age of 18. People under the age of 20.
Are there times when the government actually works counter to the idea of expanding voter participation, where it actually does things that suppress voter participation, and how do we address that?
The national government, as well as state governments, have absolutely worked in counter to the idea of our popular sovereignty. This can be seen in the Georgia 2018 gubernatorial race, in which Brian Kemp, who was not only a candidate in that race, but was also the Secretary of State at the time between 2016 and 2018, who was in charge of the voter rolls, could be seen taking away polling locations in predominantly African American areas and striking people from the voter rolls, which goes in direct anti-correlation with the idea of our popular sovereignty, which can be seen in the preamble of our Constitution, we the people. We the people should mean that everybody should have the right to vote.
And without the having Election Day as a national holiday, that prevents people from making it out to the polls, which actually limits the amount of people who are participating in elections and doing their civic duty.
In addition, the failure of state governments and national government to improve the voting system by allowing more technology to be introduced, such as home computer voting or digital mail-in voting, has severely limited the convenience of the voting process to many citizens, which doesn't allow them to get out to the polls and effectively exercise their popular sovereignty.
Additionally, throughout history, there has been examples of the government limiting people's right to vote. A good example of this is that after the passage of the 15th Amendment, many states, especially in the South, established things such as poll taxes and literacy tests, which established a precedent which made it much harder for now freed slaves to vote and participate in government, and that issue wasn't actually remedied until the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Additionally, the original placement of Election Day in November was based when we were more of a primarily agricultural society, and now the date of November, varying days of November, does not really work with the typical work work schedule of an American today?
In connection with voting rights, there are, I think, several references to linking voting rights to being taxpayers. Is that an intentional distinction? What's the, should somebody be more entitled to vote if they're a taxpayer versus not a taxpayer? Because we made several references to taxpayers. And if that is an important distinction, isn't it a logical conclusion that people who may pay more taxes should get to have more votes?
I feel as though those who pay taxes should be able to vote. However, I do not feel as though an increased amount of tax paid means that you get more votes. It was decided in a Supreme Court case that one vote per one person. So the idea of the idea of one vote one person means that that people are more equal in the popular sovereignty. Thus, there's no inequality in the voting rights, as well as the fact that when you pay taxes, you are directly contributing to the government, whether it's state or federal. So in that sense, if you're contributing monetarily to our popular sovereignty, it should only make sense that you should be able to contribute through your vote and through the words that you say and the consent that you give to the government.
The one man, one vote precedent was established in Baker v. Carr and also mentioned in Reynolds v. Sims. Additionally, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
The question was, why did you make a distinction in saying voting rights are somehow linked to being taxpayers? And if that is an important distinction, why shouldn't somebody who pays more taxes get more votes?
Well, paying taxes and voting are two different types of civic duty, and I believe that they should be kept separately and addressed separately.
I respectfully disagree with my colleagues, and I would say that people who pay more taxes have a greater stake in what decisions the government makes regarding their own money. May I repeat?
Yes.
So those people may feel as if they are more entitled to more votes, and that actually may be the case for some people who have acquired greater wealth, especially with people in the top 1%, are able to influence elections so greatly. So therefore, it's not necessary for people who have more money to be able to vote more than once, because people who have acquired a large amount of wealth are able to influence elections very greatly, especially with the Supreme Court cases in the United Citizens United.
Thank you very much. So we will give some feedback at this point.
You guys did a good job with that. That question I asked you was not an easy one to answer. And you did a good job not only with that question, but I want to congratulate you for all the questions that you answered. You did an outstanding job because it's not really possible to answer questions the way you did unless you have a very deep knowledge and comfort with the subject matter. So I want to congratulate all of you for that. It was a particularly outstanding budget.
Thank you. I liked how you definitely listened to each other, both when you were doing the original opening argument. You weren't just sort of sitting there waiting for your part to come. You were actually listening to your colleagues as they spoke. I like that. And I like that there was a lot of knowledge of recent events. There was reference to Proposition 4 that passed in Florida, and there was reference to the recent Georgia elections. So you're definitely on top of the facts. I really like that.
And I also like the way you moved in cases, and it was echoing what you said, but definitely you prepared, you brought it out appropriately, and the examples were excellent and current and well connected to what you were trying to address. Very well done.
My comment is that throughout, from the first sentence through the end, you were all cool, calm, and collected, and I thought that was amazing for persons of your age. Good luck in your college experience.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, and congratulations to your teacher and preparation. Excellent. Good luck, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Before you pick up your stuff, I just want to let you know I'm really proud of you. I think you did a really good job.
Thank you.
That means you didn't feel good.
I think you did a really good job. I don't want to say that. You know me. I'm always going to think that you can do better, because you can and you always will, because you're going to move forward and you're always going to build upon the experience that you have. But you built upon the experience of preparing for this very well, and I think you did a really good job. So.
They asked us hard questions.
That's
They
hard.
did.
You responded. That was hard. I think I was supposed to be like, you were right. Actually, rich people should be able to.
Yeah, so I was like, guys, the community.